"You're under arrest, Grandpa." The deputy's bark sliced the humid Louisiana night, but Daniel Rigg didn't flinch. He offered his wrists, calm as low tide, eyes fixed on a darkness only he could see. At 66, the former Marine moved like weather-worn. Granite slow, inevitable, uncomplaining. Handcuffs clicked, headlights washed across his face, and neighbors whispered, "Unstable, dangerous, relic." They didn't know silence was his armor. Inside the two-story courthouse tucked between a dusty library and a faded dentist's office, locals jockeyed for seats. Reporters smelled quirky vet fodder for the evening broadcast. The charge was laughably small misdemeanor intimidation at a gas pump, yet the hush in the room felt artillery-heavy. Daniel sat stone still in second-hand jeans, a plain gray shirt, and boots scarred by deserts half a world away. Every bailiff gave him space without knowing why. Testimony sputtered. A clerk described aggressive posture. A bystander recalled a muttered threat about ending a man from 800 yards. The alleged victim, neck brace crooked for effect, painted Daniel as a ticking grenade, living in the shadow of a uniform he no longer deserves. The prosecutor pounced, voice slick with rehearsed outrage. This wasn't heroism, it was menace. Daniel's public defender, fresh barred, overworked, begged him to speak. He refused. Words had weight. He'd carried enough. Jurors read him as either guilty or broken. The judge, pen tapping, sensed a verdict leaning toward conviction. When deliberations began, the courtroom exhaled, certain the story would end. With an orange jumpsuit and a shrug, nobody noticed the black SUV that hummed to a stop outside. No lights, no siren. The man who stepped out wore a dress uniform creased like origami, 4 silver stars glinting under the rising sun. Retired General Samuel Wyatt, former head of Special Operations Command, walked past security without a word. Doors parted, spines straightened, and a forgotten legend crossed the threshold. Back inside, the jury was still out. The prosecutor scrolled his phone, bored. Daniel stared at nothing. Then the doors opened. Cameras clicked. The judge stood instinctively, robe swaying. The general didn't glance at the bench or counsel tables. He marched straight to the defendant's chair. For the first time all day, Daniel lifted his gaze. Recognition flashed like distant ordnance snow. Salute, no handshake. Just 2 soldiers linked by battles other people only stream on documentaries. The room froze, caught between curiosity and reverence. The judge cleared her throat, voice thin. "General Wyatt, may I ask?" "I'm here for him," Wyatt said, baritone steady, motioning to Daniel. "He doesn't know I came." He wouldn't have asked. Murmurs rippled. Reporters leaned in, hungry. Wyatt turned, addressing everyone and no one. 31 years ago, outside Fallujah, my team was trapped behind a collapsing wall. Radios dead, 2 men down, insurgents closing fast. Then a single sniper carved us a path, 12 shots, 5 minutes. The last at 9-100-30-6 yards through crosswind. That bullet kept me breathing. The sniper was Gunnery Sergeant Daniel Rigg. Gasps punctured the silence. The prosecutor paled, verdict notes forgotten. Wyatt's words weren't testimony, they were a citation. He paused, scanning faces that suddenly felt very small. "You call this a misdemeanor. I call it a debt unpaid." Whatever harsh phrase he allegedly uttered. You should hear what war sounds like when nobody's wearing ear protection. He stepped closer to the jury box. Rigg never chased medals. He came home, faded into woods and memory, because people feel safer forgetting what victory costs. But make no mistake, when chaos erupts, you pray for men who can stay this calm. The judge, voice shaky yet formal, asked, "General, are you submitting sworn testimony?" Wyatt nodded. "With your permission, Your Honor. I'd like the citizens deciding his fate to understand the full weight of the man before them." Jurors shifted, shame coloring their cheeks. Outside, dawn burned the courthouse windows gold, but inside the air chilled. In that suspended breath before judgment, two trajectories intersected, one man's quiet exile and another's impossible gratitude. Moments later, the bailiff cracked open a side door. The jury had questions. The prosecutor swallowed, momentum swinging like a loose boom in heavy surf. Daniel remained a pillar, but his stillness now looked like grace, not menace. Wyatt rested a hand on Rigg's shoulder, silent solidarity that spoke louder than any rank insignia. The room waited, heartbeat slow, for whatever came next. The jurors re-entered 15 minutes later, whispering among themselves, eyes wide as children glimpsing the comet. The foreperson handed the bailiff a note, then hesitated, stealing glances at the decorated titan beside the defendant. Before the judge could read the slip, Wyatt surprised them all. He stepped to the well, presence consuming the space. "Your Honor, one final statement." The judge nodded, unable to find objection. Wyatt faced Daniel, voice dropping to a confession only microphones could catch. "Gunnery Sergeant, you never accepted the medals I tried to pin on you back in '94. You said the real heroes were the men we lost. Maybe you're right. But today, in this civilian arena, I need you to accept something else, my apology. I spent decades soaking up accolades that belonged equally to you." Then, deliberate as a rifle bolt, the 4-star general knelt. No press conference, no prepared spectacle, just a warrior humbling himself before another. The sound that followed wasn't a gasp. It was collective breathlessness. A bailiff's hand trembled so hard his cuffs rattled. The prosecutor dropped his pen. Daniel's stoic mask fractured, not with tears, but with a soft exhale, as though a weight slipped from his spine. He reached down, lifted Wyatt by the forearm, and the two men stood locked in silent respect. The judge's gavel struck once, twice calling the room back to order. She read the jury's question, "May we hear General Wyatt's testimony officially before deliberating further?" Procedural knots tightened, but she granted the request. Under oath, Wyatt detailed the Fallujah extraction, coordinates, wind vectors, casualty numbers, the single impossible shot threading rubble and smoke. His recollection was clinical, lethal, irrefutable. Every juror felt the battlefield dust cling to their imagination. When the general finished, the defense finally spoke 3 sentences. "My client chose duty over safety, silence over self-promotion. That discipline hasn't left him. Dismiss the charge." No embellishment, because none was needed. The jury vanished again. Time stretched. Reporters fired off hurried updates. The story had mutated from local oddity to national headline. Outside, veterans gathered, word traveling faster than any network feed. Some brought worn service caps. Others simply stood at attention, living testimonies of sacrifices civilians seldom notice. Inside, Daniel sat differently now, shoulders lifted, eyes steady but no longer remote. The silence around him felt respectful, not fearful. The prosecutor leafed through statutes, hunting for footing he no longer had. At 10:17 a.m., the jury returned. Faces flushed, they refused eye contact with Daniel or Wyatt, as if worried humility might spread like contagion. The verdict read, "Not guilty." The judge added her own coda. "All charges expunged. Mr. Rigg, you are free to go." Cuffs were removed. Chains clinked to the floor like obsolete relics. Applause rose then, softened into a reverent hush. Cameras caught Daniel giving the faintest nod gratitude without theatrics. Wyatt joined him at the aisle. Together they walked past the press gauntlet and stepped into sunlight. Veterans lining the walkway snapped salutes. Some civilians copied them, unsure yet compelled. Daniel did not speak. He looked toward the tree line where dawn had climbed, inhaled, and appeared lighter than when he'd arrived. Reporters shouted questions. "Gunny, any comment?" "General, will you petition for a Medal of Honor?" Both men kept moving. Recognition wasn't the point. Survival, dignity, and silent brotherhood were. At the curb, Wyatt broke silence. "Let me give you a ride home." Daniel shook his head. "Home's just 10 miles. I've marched farther for worse reasons." Wyatt chuckled, the sound of steel eased by memory. "Then allow an old commander to walk part of the way." They started down the sidewalk, medals and history glinting beneath the growing sun. Two men whose bond needed no broadcast. By noon, social feeds overflowed. #HonorRig, #Silence in Service, memes of a kneeling 4-star captioned "Respect." The gas station complainant deleted his posts. The prosecutor issued a terse statement of respect for the jury's decision. In living rooms nationwide, arguments flared about veterans, justice, and the difference between threat and trauma. Daniel Rigg never logged on. He fixed the torn flag in his trailer window, brewed coffee, and sat on the porch listening to birds he could finally hear without the roar of memory. Justice had not shouted. It had whispered through steadfast silence and the unexpected weight of a single knee on old courthouse tiles. Drop a comment below about the quiet heroes you know, so none of them have to wait for a miracle visit from a 4-star to reclaim their worth. Let's keep their names alive together today online.